Have you ever believed that a single doubtful glance could shape a child's entire fate? Or that a plane ticket wasn't just a slip of paper but a doorway out of poverty, a path to a mother, a chance to have a home again? Today's story doesn't begin with triumph. It begins with a torn old bag, a fragile dream, and an airport hallway where people get lost not because they don't know the way, but because no one shows them the way. In a place where everyone else had a destination, Jaden Carter, a 15-year-old boy, had only one wish: to get back to his mother. No ticket. No money. No one to stand up for him. Just a heart full of determination, and a fragile belief that if luck smiled, he might be allowed on that flight. But what Jaden didn't know was, airports aren't made for dreams. They're built for control. For regulations. For watchful, suspicious eyes. And sometimes, they become the first place to kill a child's hope simply because of his skin color and the clothes he wears. Yet in that harsh place, there were people actions that sparked a flicker of hope. A pilot. A homeless man who used to work in IT. A woman from a non-profit organization. One by one, quietly, without fanfare, they laid the first stones for a journey no one saw coming. This isn't just a story about a boy denied boarding. It's a story about rejecting prejudice. About turning a breakdown into a launch pad. If you've ever been misjudged, cast aside just because you didn't fit the standard, then this story is for you. Jaden Carter was only 15. No escort. No boarding pass. No family by his side. Just an old sling bag with a few changes of clothes, a photo of his mother, and one simple dream: to hug her again, after nearly a year apart. His mother was working as a janitor in a high-rise building in downtown Atlanta, exhausted, alone, still texting Jaden every night. "I'll try to save enough to bring you here as soon as I can. But for now, please hang in there, okay?" But for now had already stretched too long for Jaden. He couldn't take it anymore. Living with his aunt who didn't make him feel welcome felt like abandonment. So, he made a choice. He took a gamble. He found something called a standby ticket on YouTube. A few videos said that if you were lucky, you might be allowed to board a flight at the last minute if there were empty seats. No guarantees. No certainty. But if you had enough faith, maybe it would work. Standby. Such an American word. Such an American idea. It speaks of the hope to squeeze into a system that's already full with nothing but patience and belief that someone might make room for you. Jaden entered the airport with that kind of hope. He stood still, eyes locked on the departure screen. His gaze fixed on a single line of text. Atlanta, boarding soon. His heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst. At the airline counter, Jaden took a deep breath and stepped forward. He said softly to the man behind the desk, "I don't have a ticket, but I'm trying to go see my mom. I heard you can fly standby. Is that possible, sir?" The staff member, a middle-aged man, paused, surprised. He looked at Jaden. Then at the worn strap of his bag, his thin face, and the earnest eyes. "Standby's really tough these days, son," he replied. "This flight's already overbooked." Jaden tightened his grip on the strap. Pressed his lips together. He was wagering all his hope on a stranger because deep down, he believed, maybe this time, fate would be kind. In America, standby lists are typically reserved for airline employees or people with confirmed tickets who are changing flights. A child, with no adult escort, no ticket, no reservation has virtually no chance. But Jaden didn't know that. He didn't fully understand the system, but he knew one thing. He needed his mother. Now. Some travelers in the US spend 2 nights at airports, waiting for standby. Some make it. Some don't. For adults, it's an inconvenience. But for a child, it's everything they've got. When you're poor, it's not just about lacking money. You lack the right to exist in certain spaces. Jayden wasn't short on courage. He was just short on opportunity to prove he deserved a seat. What's going on here? A man's voice rang out not as a question, but as a warning. Jayden turned around, stammering. I was just asking if I could fly standby, sir. The security officer, his name tag read green, didn't he nod? Didn't smile. He just stared long and hard at Jayden's young face and the old bag on his shoulder. As if Jayden had committed a crime. Just minutes earlier, Jayden had believed that kindness could open a path. But now, before any door could open, someone stood firmly in the way. The ticketing agent tried to explain that Jayden was just asking. That he hadn't done anything wrong. But Green's eyes never left the boy. His gaze wasn't one of concern, it was a verdict. Let me see your ID, he said, coldly. Jayden pulled out a worn, bent ID card creased from too much time in his pocket. Green took it, inspecting it like he was examining a forgery. Then he asked the question that made Jayden's blood run cold. You have no ticket? No guardian? What exactly are you trying to do here? In U.S. airports, security officers have the authority to detain anyone they suspect of suspicious behavior even if no rules have been broken. And suspicious, sometimes just means, you're too poor to fit in. In 2018, a boy of Indian descent was denied boarding in Texas because he had no adult escort even though he had a ticket. A black college student in Florida was forced to have his bag searched just for waiting too long at his gate. The truth is, airport security sometimes becomes a legal mask for prejudice. Sometimes, rules are used for protection. But other times they are reused as an excuse for exclusion. The difference between justice and rigidity lies in an eye that chooses to listen. That day, Jayden needed someone to see him as a child longing for his mother, not a threat to be eliminated. But sadly, Green wasn't that person. Did you come here alone? Who brought you? Do you have any money? Open your bag. We need to inspect it. Jayden nodded. Answered. Handed over his bag. Not because he had done anything wrong. But because he knew that resistance would only make things worse. His personal belongings were pulled out in front of everyone. An old MP3 player, a few crumpled bills and coins, a photo of his mother, a worn-out t-shirt. There was nothing suspicious except for one thing. He was poor. When they returned the bag, Jayden was left with nothing but shame. He was escorted out of the airport terminal as if expelled. His footsteps grew heavier. The automatic doors shut behind him, cold, final, and more crushing than any prison gate. But, right there, at the edge of disappointment, something unexpected happened. A stranger, a man in a pilot's uniform, sat down beside Jayden in a 24-hour diner and asked gently, "You doing okay, kid?" That simple question was the beginning of something no one could have predicted. Have you ever had everything you own laid out for strangers to judge? Not because you did something wrong, but because they didn't believe you were innocent? Jayden had. The airport security room wasn't like in the movies. No red flashing lights. No two-way mirrors. Just a small, sterile space, metal chairs, blank walls. But for Jayden, it was where his dignity was peeled away, piece by piece. "Open your bag," a female officer said. Her tone wasn't harsh, but it wasn't kind either. Jayden obeyed. He had once dreamed this place would be the start of a reunion. Now, each item pulled from his bag felt like a cut into his self-worth. A frayed hoodie. A scratched plastic MP3 player. A few loose coins. And a photograph. One of his mother, holding him on the day of his middle school graduation. The officer picked up the photo, glanced at it. Jayden couldn't tell whether her look held pity or just scrutiny. Then she set the photo aside like it was worthless. Airports aren't courts. but they often become silent courtrooms. No one bangs a gavel. No one reads a verdict. They don't have to. Suspicion. A stare. Institutional authority. That's all it takes. No one screamed at Jaden. No one cursed him out loud. But the silence, the cold detachment. It cut deeper than any insult. According to the ACLU, Black and Latino passengers in the U.S. are twice as likely to be subjected to random pat-downs or bag checks. Even when there's no sign of wrongdoing. We don't always call it discrimination. But it's there. Real. Icy. And unspoken. Sometimes, the deepest humiliation isn't in the action, but in a gaze that says, "I don't believe you." Jaden didn't need someone to fight for him. He just needed someone to ask, "Are you okay?" But in that room no one asked. Only one final sentence was spoken. "You're not going anywhere today." That's it. Jaden stood up. His back hunched not from his bag, but from a heart too heavy with disappointment. He stood outside the airport, still gripping the strap of his bag. The pain of being cast aside not for breaking rules, but for not fitting the mold washed over him like a cold wave. And yet right there, where hope had just been crushed, a hand reached out. Not to push him back, but to invite him in. A man in a pilot's jacket, voice soft like a breeze. "You look hungry. How about a hot tea, my treat?" No interrogation. No ID required. Just, kindness. And just like that, in a small diner near the airport, the first seed of Jaden's new life was planted. He had been expelled from the airport. Suspected. Searched. Treated like a problem to be handled. Now, all he had was himself, and a cheap cup of tea. Jaden didn't cry. But his eyes were red, swollen with disappointment. Then a calm, firm voice spoke. "Looks like you've had a rough day." He looked up. Next to him sat a tall man in a pilot's coat. Name tag, Daniel Logan. His face wasn't smiling. But his eyes were. They said, "I see you. And I won't ignore you." Jaden nodded awkwardly. He didn't know why this man was talking to him. But something in that warm voice made him open up. He told him hesitantly about trying to see his mom, hoping to fly standby, Officer Green. And how they tore through his bag like he was a criminal. Daniel didn't interrupt. Didn't press with questions. He just listened. With attentive eyes and respectful silence. In America and across the world, we're often told that one person can't change the system. That injustice is too big, too cold, too rigid to touch. But sometimes, one person, at the right time, in the right place may not change the world, but can save a world. And for Jaden, that world was his belief in people. In 2017, a female pilot named Kimberly Onyedike helped a young black boy get on a flight home after being held up for looking suspicious. She didn't make a scene. She simply used her credibility and character to step in. Daniel did the same. Kindness when it comes from an ordinary person is powerful. But when it comes from someone in uniform, someone with authority, it carries the weight of redemption. It doesn't just save a person. It heals the damage caused by another uniform. Jaden couldn't believe it. A total stranger, who didn't owe him anything, stepped up when he was at his lowest. Not everyone would do that. But fortunately, Daniel Logan wasn't just anyone. The next morning, Jaden was brought back to the airport. This time with Daniel by his side, and a faint flicker of hope reignited. At the security gate, a Delta staff member, Lily, was waiting. She held a special pass issued through the airline's internal system. Everything seemed to be turning around. But the world rarely lets kindness win that easily. Because in the crowd of travelers that day, there was still someone watching. With the same cold, piercing eyes as yesterday. Green. The security officer. The one who had shoved Jaden's dream off the runway. And this time he wasn't going to stand by. He's back. Green muttered. Jaden froze. He didn't need to turn around to recognize that voice. Officer Green. People began to glance over. Green stepped forward, his stare no longer just suspicious. It was obsessive. Relentless. Determined to block. I warned him yesterday, Green declared loudly, making sure everyone around could hear. Daniel remained calm. I'm a Delta pilot. The boy is under my supervision. All documents have been cleared. Green crossed his arms. Frowned. Lily, professional and composed, showed the system entry confirming that Jaden qualified for a buddy pass. But Green shook his head, voice cold. He's been flagged in the system. Internal warning. No boarding without clearing that security flag. At many major U.S. airports, security staff can assign a flag to any passenger's file if they suspect unusual behavior. Removing that flag isn't simple, it often requires senior management approval or a lengthy verification process. Worse, these decisions aren't always based on logic. Sometimes, they're driven by personal bias. In 2021, a black student in California missed a flight because of a mistakenly placed flag. Even after he explained, he was told, "The system already marked you. We have to verify again." Jaden was facing the same thing. But this time, it felt even more personal. Not protocol. Prejudice. Hope, when sparked and then extinguished again, doesn't just hurt. It scars. Jaden didn't scream. Didn't lash out. He just stood there. As if he had just heard the same sentence, for the second time. This time, the pain didn't come from strangers. It came from the feeling that he had almost made it. And was denied again. Once again, Jaden was led out of the airport. No handcuffs. No shouting. But it felt like his heart had been dragged away from the one path that could take him to his mother. That evening, Jaden sat curled up in a temporary shelter in Queens. Around him were strangers, no one knew each other's names, no one knew where they'd be tomorrow. But among those broken lives, Jaden met a small-framed man with salt and pepper hair and a deep voice. "You got a phone with internet, right? Then you've still got a way forward." The man's name was Ernest. And that simple line would mark the start of a whole new chapter in Jaden's journey. Jaden didn't sleep that night. Not because of noise. Not because of the harsh ceiling lights. But because of one thought that wouldn't go away. If I can't fly to my mom, then I'll find a way to earn the ticket myself. Ernest, the gray-haired man Jaden had met, used to work in tech. Life had pushed him back to square one. But his mind still burned bright. He looked at Jaden and asked, "You've got Wi-Fi. You've got a phone. That means you've got potential. Want to learn?" Jaden nodded. And from that day forward, two men, one young, one old, sat under dim lights, learning to code together. No classroom. No fancy laptops. Just YouTube, a notebook, and a fire that refused to die. In the digital age, opportunity isn't reserved for the wealthy. It's also a secret door for those pushed out by society. Across America, thousands of homeless individuals use smartphones to gain skills, connect to services, even launch freelance careers if given the right guidance. Jaden didn't know programming. But he knew how to be persistent. He discovered YouTube tutorials on how to build websites with WordPress. Learned to edit images using Canva. Practiced writing emails and making basic cost spreadsheets with Google Sheets. One day, a nearby corner store needed a simple order form page. Jaden offered to help, charging just $20. The site went live. The store owner was happy. And Jaden received his first ever payment, not much. but enough to spark something crucial: belief. People often think it takes a giant leap to change your life. But sometimes, all you need is the courage to press your first key. Ernest told Jaden. You don't need to be a genius. You just need to become someone others can rely on. And little by little Jaden did exactly that. His name, though still small, started to spread in the community. He became known as the kid who builds cheap websites. He even opened his first bank account with Ernest guiding him. One afternoon, while Jaden was hunched over a table at the public library, a middle-aged woman with a professional coat and kind eyes walked over. Are you Jaden? I'm Angela from the Youth Entrepreneurship Network. The corner store owner told us about you. Angela didn't just bring compliments. She brought an invitation. Not to board a flight, but to stand on a stage. Jaden had never imagined being invited to tell his story. But this would be his next step in a journey he never saw coming. Then came the email with a subject line that made his breath stop. Business proposal from Delta Airlines. Jaden froze. Delta? The same Delta Airlines that once forced him out like a suspect? Was it a mistake? He opened the message. It was from Delta's Atlanta marketing team, who'd heard about him from a local business owner he'd worked with. They were launching a community outreach program for underrepresented youth, and they needed a website, something clear, inspiring, and simple. And they were inviting Jaden to build it? He stared at the screen. Not because he didn't believe it, but because this was what he had dreamed of. To be recognized. In the US, major companies like Delta have begun implementing community reinvestment programs. Efforts to support underprivileged communities not just as charity, but as a way to repair trust with those harmed by their own systems. Jaden, once flagged as a security threat at the airport, was now being offered a partnership. He walked into Delta's Atlanta office and met Rosa, the project manager. She reviewed Jaden's portfolio, then smiled in disbelief. You built all this, with just an old phone and a beat-up laptop? Jaden nodded. Rosa handed him a 3-month contract to design the website, manage content, and suggest tools for online learning. As he stepped out of the very building that once symbolized powerlessness, Jaden clutched the strap of his backpack. Not out of fear, but because his dream had just gotten heavier, in the best possible way. Sometimes, justice doesn't arrive by tearing down the system. It comes when someone once pushed out walks back in, and proves they belong. Not through anger, but through value. By making themselves impossible to ignore. Officer Green. No longer in a security uniform. Now dressed in a suit, name tag reading, Internal Security Consultant. Their eyes met. For the first time. Not through a checkpoint or shouted commands, but in quiet recognition. Green paused. Jaden stood tall. No longer a kid being searched at the airport. Now a professional. A valued partner. After the meeting, Green approached. Gone was the commanding tone. He was just a man, trying to fix what he had broken. I'm sorry, he said. Jaden listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't shake hands. He simply replied. I don't need you to forgive me. I need you to forgive yourself. And with a quiet smile, Jaden turned toward the elevator. Upstairs was the communications department, where he was about to publicly share his story for the first time. The story of someone once kicked out, now walking back in, on his own terms. A passenger who had witnessed Jaden being searched and escorted away at JFK Airport had recorded the moment on video. At first, they hadn't intended to upload it. But after seeing Jaden speak at a STEM conference as a rising inspiration, they decided to share the clip. As a reminder of what he had endured. The video was under a minute long. Jaden innocent face, terrified expression, bag torn open, hands trembling. And the harsh voice of Officer Green. "You don't belong here, kid. Let's go." The internet doesn't forget. And when truth is backed by a face people believe in, the wave of outrage becomes unstoppable. The hashtag Justice for Jaden quickly trended on Twitter. Major outlets like BuzzFeed, Vice, Atlanta Journal-Constitution picked up the story. From rejected boy to rising entrepreneur. Activist groups like Color of Change and NAACP Youth Division issued statements. This isn't an isolated case. It's a clear reminder that prejudice still lives, and sometimes, it blinds us to the brightest lights. Jaden received interview requests from CNN, NBC, and podcasts hosted by prominent social justice leaders. He didn't know how to react. Once you begin telling your story in the light, the world may either wake up or look away. But truth has its own voice. Jaden didn't want revenge. Didn't want to sue Officer Green. Even though several lawyers offered to represent him for free. His mom was furious. Lily, the Delta staffer who once tried to help, cried watching the video. But Jaden simply said, "If that hadn't happened, maybe I wouldn't have learned how to stand up. I know that video hurt a lot of people. It hurt me too. But today, I'm not speaking to attack. I'm speaking to give thanks. Thanks to those who stood by me from the very beginning. And thanks even to the system that pushed me down. Because that fall taught me how to fly." And in a beautiful irony, just as the internet raged with calls for justice over the old video, Delta Airlines sent Jaden a new invitation. "We would like to honor you at our upcoming Community Trailblazers event at the Martin Luther King Jr. Historic Park." Jaden looked up from his screen. He hadn't imagined that the boy who was dragged from an airport would one day be celebrated on the land named after a legendary civil rights leader. Outside, the world was calling for justice on Jaden's behalf. They wanted a public apology. An investigation into Officer Green. A legal fight for the truth. But inside, Jaden asked himself, "Am I fighting for justice? Or for a wound that hasn't healed?" Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood things in the world. People think forgiveness is weakness. That it means letting bad people off the hook. That it's about letting it go. But in truth, forgiveness is the peak of strength. It's what happens when you have every reason to hate and still choose peace. In America, many young black people have suffered under the weight of prejudice and violence. Some turn their anger into activism. Others, like Jaden, turn it into a lesson. After days of reflection, Jaden recorded a short video. No fancy lights. No dramatic music. Just a young man sitting in front of a camera, eyes steady, voice calm. "I know I could sue. I know I could demand back everything I lost. But I don't need revenge. I need to move forward." Power doesn't lie in shouting. It lies in the quiet conviction that comes from understanding. Jaden didn't forgive Officer Green because Green deserved it. He forgave because he himself deserved peace. After his speech, Jaden stepped down from the podium. No one prompted him. No one told him what to do. He simply followed his heart. He walked toward Officer Green. Held out his hand gently, firmly. "I forgive you. Not because you earned it, but because I need to be free in my own soul." That night, back in his tiny apartment, Jaden opened his laptop to check emails. A new message popped up. Not a legal offer. Not a media request. But an invitation from a global organization focused on education and technology. "We'd like to invite you to speak at the Future Voices Forum in Geneva." From a boy once blocked at an international airport, Jaden was now preparing to step onto the world stage. With a passport of belief, and a visa of forgiveness, Jaden had reached a place few ever imagined possible. From the sidewalk outside JFK to the spotlight of a global forum, From a cracked screen on a borrowed phone, to contracts with Delta, community grants. And now, an online academy called Skyward Academy. The name Skyward was no accident. It came from that exact moment when he watched a plane soar into the clouds. While he was being escorted out, bag torn, hands empty, chest aching, Jaden's story was no longer just his story. It became a living symbol of how technology can break social barriers, how kindness can rewrite destiny, and how a heart that refuses to quit can lead an entire community forward. Skyward Academy doesn't just teach coding. It teaches faith. It teaches how to turn pain into tools, instead of chains. Within the first few months, over 300 students from underserved neighborhoods across America signed up. They learned how to build websites, create personal brands, write investor emails, and even tell their stories through tech. Jaden didn't teach the classes himself. He trained a team of mentors, most of them survivors of hardship. One student named Elijah, once expelled for bringing a beat-up laptop to school, rebuilt his mother's laundry shop website. A Mexican-American girl named Carla launched a blog on financial literacy for immigrant families. When one person dares to say, "I used to be invisible but I matter," many others find themselves in that voice too. Change doesn't begin with big campaigns. It begins with a steady heart brave enough to tell its pain without shaking. Scene transition, Geneva. The stage is bright. Jaden steps into the light, holding a microphone. No script. No LED backdrop. Just a young man. A voice. And a deep belief that his story could be the spark for thousands of others. I was once dragged out of an airport like a criminal. I had no ticket. No protection. No power. But I had one thing, a dream. And with that dream, I learned to live, not to react, but to build. Today, I'm not just flying. I'm helping others find their wings. And you know what? You don't have to be the smartest, richest, or most impressive person to begin. You just have to be brave enough to rise when life knocks you down. Jaden's story has touched millions. But it's only the beginning. If you're in a dark place in your life right now, remember, even a seed needs darkness to grow. If you see yourself in this story, leave a comment. If you believe someone out there needs to hear this, share it. If you want to keep following stories that can change lives, subscribe to this channel. Because who knows? The next story might be yours.